Hi, this is Jack Spirko, and welcome to another survival podcast video. This video is the first 10 minutes of my presentation, Gardening Without Watering. To see this presentation in its entirety live and have me answer all your questions afterward, please visit the Survival Podcast at the Reliance Expo at one of these two locations, Denver, Colorado, September 16th and 17th, and I will be doing this presentation in particular on the 16th at 11 a.m. Salt Lake City, Utah, October 7th and 8th, and the presentation date and time are yet to be announced. The Reliance Expo is a great place for you to learn more about preparedness and individual liberty. There will be a tremendous number of folks there, and we hope to see you drop by our booth, and we hope you show up for my keynote speech. And remember, there will also be a great deal of other speakers there, including Dave Canterbury from Dual Survivor from the Discovery Channel. In the video notes, there will be links to the Reliance Expo where you can find out more information, purchase tickets, and make arrangements to attend. Again, we hope to see you there. Welcome to Gardening Without Watering from the Survival Podcast. I'm your presenter, Jack Spirko. Today we're going to go through 5 ways to eliminate or greatly reduce watering for all of your gardening needs. These can be done with gardening, typical annuals. It can be done with perennials. It can be done with trees in an orchard setting. All of these things are multifunctional. In fact, all 5 of them link together. And there's actually a great deal more ways to do this. I'm actually just going to present to you today 5 of the easiest to understand and easiest to implement ways. I'm going to show you how they can be implemented in very large-scale operations, and every single one of them can also be implemented right in your own backyard. So let's get on with it. I want to ask you a question first, though, because when I tell you that you can, garden without watering, and we all water all the time, it seems like, if we're gardeners. Even with trees, we have to do quite a bit of watering early on. You might think it's impossible. You might think, how could you grow something as tender as a tomato or a pepper without watering, unless you live in a place like, let's say, Florida in the summer and it rains like every other day. Well, I want to ask you this question. Who waters the forest? Who waters the prairie? Who waters the desert? Let's take a look at some places here. What you're looking at right now is a picture that I took in Big Bend National Park in August of last year. It's desert. It's as desert as it gets. It's quite harsh conditions. In fact, I was there with a gentleman named Brian Black from ITS Tactical to do a camo survey as to how different camouflage patterns perform in various environments. And we went there because it was the closest thing that we could find to the desert mountains of Afghanistan. But look how green this one setting is, and we could get into why, and I think you'll actually understand why this particular setting's so green by the end of this presentation without me even telling you. But you can notice nobody's been out there with a watering can or a sprinkler system. This is a pretty remote area, and it's quite lush and green for a desert environment. This next picture is Nigeria. This is the Sahel region of Nigeria. It's a photo out of Permaculture magazine, and this got a lot of human help. There's some terracing going on here, some swelling, 2 of the techniques we're going to talk about. But the Sahel region is just south of the Sahara Desert. So this is the edge of the Sahara. And look how green that is. And nobody's been out there watering this either. Here, this is a picture out basically my front door in the Ouachita Mountains in Arkansas in July. A totally different environment. Does rain quite a bit there, but July is harsh. We didn't get a lot of rain in July. Eventually, some of the trees even started to brown and go to early dormancy. But as you can see, things are quite lush there with nobody taking care of anything. It's just growing on its own. This is a picture that I took in Llano, Texas in May. This is kind of an edge prairie, edge desert situation here. No one's out there watering that. You can see it's full of Indian paintbrush and coneflower and just tremendous amounts of wildflower and lush vegetation. So here's 4 very different environments, none of them that get a lot of rainfall, all of them during very harsh conditions of the years, and as you can see, nature's got it covered. So what's different then? Why, when we get perfect soil and we do everything we think right, do we need to put so much water into our gardening? Well, to understand that, you really have to learn from the best teacher. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not the teacher. The forest is our teacher. The forest can teach us everything we need to know about irrigation, agriculture, permaculture, you name it. If you want to know how to grow stuff, the forest is your teacher. Lesson 1 that we learn from the forest is the forest floor is a lake. If you look at the picture in front of you right now, what looks different to you than a field, other than there's tons of other stuff, because we'll get to that one in a minute. But when you think of a farmer's field with a bunch of corn or wheat or anything like that on it, you always see a lot of dirt. You look down and there's dirt. Do you see any dirt in this picture? And the answer is no. In fact, what you're looking at is a very deep level of leaf litter. So the forest has mulch. And what that mulch is doing, if you were to pull it back, you would see that the forest floor is moist, even in a fairly dry part of the year. This picture was taken right before this presentation. So we're looking at the beginning of September, end of August when I took this picture. I'm not sure which one. But what that means is that all of the leaves are still on the tree, and all of the leaves that fell off are pretty much decomposed. So this is the worst mulching job the forest ever has done at any one time. Because what's about to happen, of course, is fall, and when fall happens, the leaves are going to fall, and there'll be 15 inches of leaf mulch, which will repeat the process again and build that soil. Underneath that leaf litter is just a very deep layer of humus and decomposed matter. It's a fungal-based soil. And it's a very important thing to understand about forest versus something like a grassland. A grassland soil is bacterial-based. It's mostly grazing animals and bacteria breaking down the dung. In a forest, it's fungus breaking down all of the woody and leafy material. And if you think about that, what you've got here is natural compost. And it's very, very deep. And then the roots are penetrating very, very deep. And what that means is almost any time of the year, if you go into this forest and dig just a little bit, you're going to find moisture in the soil. What that means is there's water being held in the soil, and that water can go down 6, 7, 8, 9 feet deep and can occupy, let's say, almost an inch of water per foot can be held in that soil. So if we had just, let's say, 4 feet of soil that we were taking into account here, and each was holding an inch, that's 4 inches of water. It doesn't sound like a lot, but if you have a forest with 1 million acres, and you have a 4-inch deep water, and that's in a dry period, by the way, 4-inch deep period of water across 1 million acres, you have a 4-inch deep 1-million-acre lake. And that's what the forests are. The forest floor is a lake. If you want to understand everything that I'm going to teach you in this presentation, you have to grasp the concept that the forest floor is not just a pile of dirt and leaves. It's holding massive amounts of moisture in a lake. So the second lesson then is that water moves and natural dams are created. If you look at this picture here, this is in my backyard basically, and I can tell you I didn't put it there. And it wasn't there a year ago. So there were some trees that were broken down and some floodwaters came, and it came down this wash, and you see what it's done. It's built up this dam. And you can think about the water is now moving under the ground. That's the big thing about the forest lakes. In any sizable lake, water is going to move. In natural lakes, it moves mainly because of wind and because of temperature variations, or maybe there's a stream going through it. In the ground, water is moved by gravity. And I want you to realize this. Once water just gets a few inches into the soil in the forest, it never ever goes up again. It gets down below the level that it can be reached by evaporation. And it continues to go down. It can go straight down, or it can flow through the soil underground. Now, if you look at this dam, what I want you to visualize, and it'll be one of our first techniques that we're going to extrapolate from here, is that if this dam stays in place long enough and more debris is piled up on top of it, eventually the forest will begin to do what? Build soil right on top of this dam. And all of that wood material down there will be holding moisture and be underwater. And when it rains above there, the water will flow across the surface. Eventually, it'll run into the dam's impediment. Some of it will go down into the surface and flow through the surface, and it will build up a reserve right on top of that dam of wood. So the next time you see blowdowns and rotten logs in the forest, I promise you, by the end of this presentation, you're going to see them a lot differently. The next thing we have to learn from the forest is that nature never monocrops. Monocropping is what it sounds like, one crop. So this is how we do conventional agriculture, and many of us do this even in our gardens. We might grow 20 different vegetables, but every vegetable has its own row or hill or mound or bed. And that's not the way nature works. And you wonder why we can't pull off what nature does. Well, we don't do what nature does. You look at that row of corn there on the left side of the screen, and it looks really neat, right? It's an interesting pattern, but it doesn't provide. The corn can't help the corn. is the best way to look at this. You look in the picture to the right side, and you can see a huge variety of plant life going. Again, this is a picture from my backyard. In fact, way in the back there, that clump is from the earlier pictures, just further away there. But when I walked this little area that I knew I took this picture of, I was able to quickly identify 16 different species of plants, and they were just the ones that I knew by name. And what that tells me is there's probably 50 of them in there. And all of these species are supporting each other in a variety of ways. And from a water standpoint, the trees are supporting the undergrowth. Trees are giant hydraulic pumps. You said water never goes up in the forest, with one exception, when plants, especially trees, take it up. And as they pull it up into the canopy at certain times, the tree takes more water than it needs, and it actually begins to sweat or transpire water. And there'll be condensation drip in the morning. So that's one source that these plants give each other. But all of these plants have root systems at different levels. You know, you've heard things like you can't grow blueberries in a certain place because the soil's not acidic. I can tell you right now, it's probably nonsense. You could probably grow a blueberry just about anywhere you want. You might need to give it a little help with some acid level rising with some amendments and things like that. But basically, if you don't turn soil over, if you don't plow it up, soil stratifies into layers, and different layers will have different levels of acid, different levels of moisture, different levels of nutrient. And some plants will go deeper and some plants will go shallower. And if a plant is acid loving, it will put its root system into a stratified level where the acid is. Well, if a certain plant needs a certain mineral, it's going to go to where that mineral is. And as these plants take up these nutrients, take up this water, they're able to share it with each other. They share it sometimes directly, like transpiration from a tree, but they also share it in ways, let's say a plant that's really good at mining minerals that other plants that have shallower roots need. Well, that plant will take that up. Eventually, that plant will die. And when it dies and decomposes, those minerals have now become available to the plants at the shallower levels as the water takes it back down.